Good Morning Miramar, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m., right here, right now.
Good morning, Miramar. We are back. My name is Danielle Reales, Marketing Coordinator with the City of Miramar's Office of Marketing and Public Relations, and this is...
Hi, I'm Alexis, Marketing Coordinator with the City of Miramar's Office of Marketing and Public Relations as well. Welcome to today's show, Best Of. We're doing a best of all of our favorite moments from Good Morning Miramar, and we want to relive some of that with you all today.
Yes, so we picked out 2 episodes that we really loved, and what was nice is that one of them was hosted by me, the other was hosted by Alexis. So we'll introduce our prospective episodes, and we'll kind of just talk about the conversation a little bit. We'll have you take a flashback look, and if you haven't seen those episodes, you'll be able to see them here this morning. So we're so glad that all of you tuned in. Please remember, we are live every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 10:30. You can check us out on social media. You can watch us live on Facebook by searching at City of Miramar. You can also watch us on Periscope at City of Miramar as well. We are also live on Comcast Channel 78 for Miramar residents. And if you want to listen on the radio and you just, you can't watch because you're driving or something, you can do that by downloading the TuneIn radio application and search. It's right here in Miramar to listen live on the radio. So now, without further ado, the first guest that I want to reintroduce to you all is Isabella Acker. She is the founder and owner of Prism Creative Group, a really great marketing firm out of Miami, Florida. We had a really good conversation earlier this summer about just some really fun ways that she's engaging with the community in Miami, revamping the culture and just, re-engaging the community with some really great events. We also talked entrepreneurship and a lot of really fun topics. So go ahead. I'd like you all to tune into that and stay with us because we'll have a quick conversation about it. So welcome, Isabella.
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I was on your website and I received information about your bio, and I think your story is fascinating, and I'm so excited that you're here today to talk to our audience and just tell them a little bit about yourself and what Prism Creative Group is doing in South Florida. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of how you got started in this industry.
Sure. So I'm originally born and raised in Atlanta, moved down to Miami here about 10 years ago, came down to FIU. And I saw that there was a huge opportunity to really pioneer in what it meant of experiencing day-to-day life, from cultural programming to community building to supporting small businesses. And so it really began to shape the kind of work we got excited to take on as clients. And we wanted to focus on things that really were mission aligned with what we're trying to do in the city. That's twofold, but my bio is my company bio.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, particularly tell us about your interest in culture, because you're not only the founder, but you are the cultural curator.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that means to you and how you got so interested in the culture of Miami specifically, because like you mentioned, you're originally from Atlanta.
Sure, yeah. So, I think when we talk about just what it means to engage community, you always look at what are different pillars, what are different objectives. And so within that, we always fall within live entertainment, food and beverage, arts or nonprofit organizations, small businesses. And so we have these pillars that we really work to curate what are really exciting experiences. I noticed when I first came down to Miami that all of the most amazing events happened to be, and it was in air quotes, they're the best event you want to go to, and they're liquor-sponsored events, and they were really underwhelming. And so I really felt that the community-free events wasn't something that people put a lot of energy or thought into because, I guess free had a different connotation in Miami. So we wanted to turn that around and really create amazing, compelling events that were really just for everybody. And, it's interesting because they start as events, but they turn into something that creates engaged platforms, where bands all of a sudden have bigger followings than the kind of people who follow their music. Or, the film festival, who've done really awesome outdoor screenings. They actually end up meeting huge ticket sale goals because of, outdoor screenings that we get to do together. And so when you kind of get to work with the community and see what everybody is trying to do and like how could you actually position this so everybody gets elevated, that's something where we feel like the city is winning, Right. And so, I don't know, I think the curating comes from, we always want to be working and programming and aligning, South Florida's best, and I know that's subjective, but we've really spent a lot of years on the ground, seeing who is here and what kind of talent and how they're polishing their organizations, their art, so that's kind of where that comes from.
Definitely. Now, we talked a little bit about your experience in marketing, and kind of how you shifted yourself to being the owner of your own business. Tell us a little bit about your agency itself, your team, and kind of the type of experiences that you create.
Yeah, definitely. So I left Live Nation about 2 years ago, and Live Nation is an amazing company. I was working out of the Fillmore, and we were doing some of the best concerts. I could go on, like Dave Chappelle and Queens of the Stone Age and all these amazing shows. And although it was something really amazing, I felt very disconnected to the community. And so that was something that I was actually trying to figure out. How could I, me as an individual, actually create something that I can feel more connected to? Mm-hmm. And so that was really the birth of Prism. And within that, actually my former editor of music blog, Paula Bunster, she's now our director of storytelling. And so a lot of that we engage with, which is locally conscious storytelling, which is providing information, creating guides, really having people understand the landscape of South Florida and who's here. She is the mastermind of that. And so I always say I'm really nothing without her. Uh-huh. And also we have a chief social media alchemist, and we have an event producer. So we're a team of 4. We happen to all be females. Yes, so we're representing that. But yeah, it's we have a lot of different campaigns we're working on. So we stay busy.
Now, speaking of campaigns, you brought some really cool swag here today.
Yes.
Support local. Tell us a little bit about that. And for those of you, if you want to see, these are just really cool, like postcards and stickers. Community is sexy. Tell us a little bit about the idea behind Support Local.
Sure. So we started interviewing and reviewing restaurants on our blogs. Mm-hmm. When we sat down with owners and chefs, 9 out of 10 of them said if they knew what it took to open, some of my favorite concepts, if they knew what it took to open in South Florida, they would not have done it.
Really?
It was very disheartening when you're really trying on the ground to change that dialogue. And it really is because of the permitting process and really everything that you have to go through within the infrastructure to open a brick and mortar. I ended up actually approaching the City of Miami, and I was like, I know you guys care about small businesses. Like, how can it be? And I've never been through this experience on the flesh, so I really went in as like, I know I'm naive to this, so just
educate.
Yeah, let me know, like, what's the deal with this? And they said, the system is something that they've been working on actually optimizing the way it currently is. But the problem is with the way it currently stands is people can waste 3 or 4 months going through a process that they didn't even need to know because they're in a different jurisdiction or a different zone or all these things that it came down to. I was like, okay, it's communication, it's information, and it's efficiency. And so we sat down with the City of Miami and we said, okay, we have this really awesome community service that we're doing, which is this Support Local. And we want to figure out a way to actually change the way businesses build in Miami. Can we work together? And they said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's create a pilot program, and let's actually take in all the community feedback of this pilot program and create an upgraded, more efficient system. So it's actually really cool because when we set out to do this, we didn't know that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. What it currently stands is it's a curated business directory of 13 different categories, everything from F&B to makers, artisans, graphic designers. It's truly who we believe are really making waves within South Florida. So when big agencies or big brands come down from New York, they actually understand how they can support local. Because that's another thing. Everyone gets really excited, but they don't even know where they could begin, Right. So I think the really interesting thing is we're providing a platform. We're helping promote these businesses. We are actually creating a directory that could be used for other opportunities and hopefully changing the way businesses build in South Florida. I mean, fingers crossed, right?
Fingers crossed, definitely. And I know here in the City of Miramar, kind of like our tagline, it's right here in Miramar, and we definitely do what we can to support our local businesses here and really get the community involved and engaged with what small business owners are doing, right here in our community. And it's great to see somebody else who's really, making waves in that, especially here in South Florida. I guess I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the cultural preservation movement that you have. Tell us a little bit about that, and what does it mean to preserve culture?
So I think when we started working with different neighborhoods, one of our first clients, the Arts and Entertainment District, which is right in between downtown and Wynwood, that area was always desolate, right? And they said, how can we create a new identity that's not the visual arts and, also something that speaks new? We realized that as we've been going into different neighborhoods and different, roles in the community, we want to work with and amplify what already exists, and I think that creating a stronger platform. You go to Little Havana, and you see Tuesday at 1 p.m., there's vibrant live music, there's incredible dancers, and, that is their community. They're there all the time, and so the tourists see them at night, during the day, and then the locals see them at night, and I think there's an opportunity to amplify every neighborhood within what they already have, and not source from other places, but what's in their backyard, and so I think it speaks a little to that. And I think it's about connecting conversations and people and organizations that don't actually always talk to each other, which, you would expect, and it doesn't always happen. And so that's a lot of been what the energy we've been trying to move towards.
Definitely. Well, that's amazing. And, we are running out of time, but to close it off, I would ask you as well, what advice would you give to maybe young marketers or entrepreneurs out there who might be interested in creating their own story for their own community?
Just start. I think that we overthink a lot as humans, and in general, with any new endeavor you take on, it's normal to feel fear, insecurity, all these things are part of the creative process. But I think that what I realized when I started within the local live music community, and it felt that nobody cared, is that there's someone out there just like you that cares about the same thing you do, that can put energy into something that's never been done before in your own way, And so I wouldn't overthink it. I would start where you are. If you have 5 people that show up to an event, amazing. Work for 10 on the next. And I think that it's a scary process, but you kind of just gotta embrace it. You're meeting me now 7 years later. I've had quite a bit, and I'm starting to feel that the fear is just part of it,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
We hope that you all enjoyed that flashback to the interview with owner of Prism Creative Group, Isabella Acker. Now, Alexis, I want to get your take on it. I know that what she talks about, and you actually helped book that guest, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
She talked about a lot of really great topics concerning culture and community, as well as entrepreneurship. So I'd like to talk about entrepreneurship first. What I loved about her experience is that she worked so much in the corporate world and like the business side, and she took that experience to really go out on her own and create something that she was really passionate about. And as a woman, I think that's super inspiring.
Yes. Isabella is definitely a girl boss.
Yes.
So shout out to her for that. And I think it's super important that from any job, whether it's going from corporate into your own business or just moving from one position into another, that you always take something from your experience, because that's what really makes it worthwhile, is the lessons, the growth that you're able to cultivate in that. And for her, it worked out really well, because now she has this business savvy that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily have going into it. And so she's able to not only curate something of value, but also share that knowledge with other people through the networking opportunities that she provides through Prism, like she talked about, just connecting with different people in the entertainment industry, as well as just connecting other businesses together in that way. So I found that to be really valuable, a really valuable asset that she possessed, and also very smart of her to look at what the corporate structure is and then bring it to smaller business models.
Yes, absolutely. And what I loved is that, once again, she really, she was working and she was really doing her thing, and she had a job that she liked, but she really took that and turned it into a passion, which I love. I think the best work, especially in the creative field, comes out of doing something that you care about and that you're actually passionate about. And she's also forging these communities together, which is something else I wanted to talk about. It's kind of like the culture that she's promoting. South Florida,
Right.
as a whole, bringing it back to basics, back to its roots. I think a lot of times, even, you know, in cities like our surrounding city of Miramar, we kind of lose what makes Florida so unique.
Right,
so
the grassroots.
diverse.
It's so communal in its nature because the cities are so close.
Yes.
You can literally go from one street to the next and you're in a completely different zip code. So that sense of community is something that's just geographically and culturally something that we possess. And you're right, I think we do forget in making it more of a tourist destination about the people who live, work, and play here every day.
Yes. And, you know, I know that there's so much new business coming to South Florida. I mean, we see it here in Miramar, all of the corporations that are coming up, which is great for our economy, great for our residents, because, you know, we're really offering jobs to people, which I think is so important. But you know, we're also recruiting people from the outside to come here, which is great because we're getting a lot of new talent. But I'm wondering, are we trying to make South Florida desirable for people who don't live here and are coming down, and, you know, kind of trying to make it cool, like places maybe you see in like New York or LA, or are we really capitalizing on what's quintessential to South Florida? You know, the Hispanic culture that we have, the beaches, the nature. I don't think even people realize how much
the Afro-Caribbean and African-American influence down here, the urban influence down here. I think it's a good question. I think that what makes what Isabella does so intriguing is that she's able to kind of find that sweet spot in between, doing things that will attract people who don't know anything about South Florida, but also still providing areas and events for people who do call this place home.
And really celebrating
celebrating like the richness of culture here. So that was one of the things that stood out to me about that interview that made it really great. She was just a great guest. Thank you again, Isabella, if you're watching, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We wish you all the best in all of your endeavors coming up. And we are going to go ahead and segue into the segment that I hosted. We were very fortunate to have Tara Chadwick, who is definitely a patron of the City of Miramar. She comes to all of our events all the time. And on International Peace Day, she was actually nominated and won an award that was given by a national association for her work in cultural affairs and just really preserving kind of what we were just talking about, just like the richness of culture that's native right here to Florida. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that interview. At this time, we would like to welcome Tara Chadwick, interdisciplinary traditional artist who's interested in developing and sharing her knowledge of the indigenous history of our region through transformative dance and visual art installations integrated with live sound, movement, and spoken word. Although Ms. Chadwick is most well known as a contemporary vocalist for her 10-year stint with the Nicoin Singers, she is also gaining notoriety for her work in visual art and as Mesoamerican spark dancer. Tara is here today to chat about International Peace Day and her United Nations Cultural Educator Award and some of her upcoming performances. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I always watch the show on Facebook.
Oh, good.
So it's nice to finally be
well,
on the pink screen.
Well, it is an honor to have you here and on such an important day as International Peace Day. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and we heard a little bit about your career, but just the journey of transition. You have such a vast career to share, so I'll let you tell the audience about that.
Okay, well, I was born in Toronto, Canada, and when I was 6, we moved here to South Florida. South Florida happens to be midway between Toronto and Belize, where my parents are both from, so we're, you know, the middle of the compromise geographically. And so I grew up here in South Florida primarily. I went back to school in Toronto after graduating from Miramar High School in 1990. And in the 90s in Toronto, in fact, in 1992, around this time, there was a large movement of the Indigenous people of Toronto, the Native Canadians, they're called there, Ojibwe, Haudenosaunee, people from all over that are from this continent were celebrating in their way the centennial of Columbus in 1992. So that was 500 years. But how they celebrated was 500 years of resistance and survival. And that time of workshops and art shows and lectures and symposia, all this stuff that was happening. And I was in my second year of university and working at the Royal Ontario Museum, and I was just like, what are these people doing? I didn't make the connection, like I knew I was Belizean, I knew I was Mayan, I knew I was Canadian, but I'm like, Columbus, I know my history. Columbus did not land in Canada. What are these people doing? Right. And so I started to pay attention and attend and learn more about the history, and that's when I realized, Native people on the continent are all Native people of the continent. Right. Like, we're all connected. And, like the divide and conquer had been very strong for me up until that time. And that was the time when I realized, I was like, we're all related. Everybody's related. We're all part of this global history of the coming together of people of all the continents. And so
tell us about how you decided to translate your passion for the global history and the information that you were able to learn at such an early stage in your life. How did you allow that to reflect in now your art and your dance?
Right.
So tell us about that.
So in 1990 at Miramar High School, there was this one course where you could get, it was like 1 year, but they had it divided up into 4 quarters. So we had sociology, psychology, political science, and anthropology.
Okay.
And when we got to the anthropology section, I freaked out because I did not know that one could pursue a course of academic study in which you could learn about your own self. Like, I was so excited. I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And that's what I did do. And, through archaeology, through ethnography, through studying histories that have been written about people all over the world, but also about people from my mother's homeland in Mesoamerica. And there's been a lot of archaeological and anthropological study in Mesoamerica. And I did that course of study. I went home and worked with the Department of Archaeology in my mom's home country every summer. And then one year, when I was working there, I made a trip to Minneapolis, and it was for a conference or something. And at one point, there were all these dancers that were dressed just like the way that the stone carvings are in Belize, and I could not believe it. Like, I was flabbergasted because I had never seen a dancer like that before, and I was like, why are we trying to dig everything up and try to figure out what it means when there's people carrying stories through dance? And so then that's when I started to become very interested, and kind of ended up having the opportunity to pursue that course of study, that artistic course of study, to complement the academics that I had already done. So now I find it really fun to be able to integrate both, because it just expands the learning opportunities to me. And also I think dance and music, voice and rhythm can impact people in a much stronger way than a report in a magazine or in a journal.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously you're doing a phenomenal job with sharing that, and it's so important for people to understand the cultural richness of where they come from, not just within their own culture, but where they live, the cultural history there. And let's talk a little bit about where your career has led you right here in Miramar, and some of the things that you're doing right here in the city.
Well, I moved to Miramar in 1989, very begrudgingly, because I did not want to come back to Florida. I wanted to stay in Toronto. I liked the cold, and Miramar High School was, it was good. It was really cool. I got to study all this different stuff. And 5 years ago, my mom said, it's time for you to come home again. And I was like, I'm not coming home, Mom. Forget it. It's not happening. I'll come visit you on Christmas. That's it. And about a week or two later, I got this random email. Did you see that job posting? And sure enough, a random job posting came through, and I guess my mother's will was done. So I moved my family back here after all those years, and it's, I came back to a very changed area. There's a lot more people here. Our neighborhood is much more diverse. And, the city of Miramar has grown, like the city itself, like even the support that we provide to our constituents here in Miramar. I really enjoy being where we are, close to the sea, but not too close, close to Miami, close to Fort Lauderdale. And even at my son's school, I think that the principal last year said that there's children from over 64 different countries that go to school with him. And many of them, I don't remember the stats now, but many of them even are English language learners as well. And so it's important for us to acknowledge the land where we are and the history of this land. I think we could do a better job here in Miramar at acknowledging that we are on Seminole and Miccosukee territory and know our history. And one place you could do that is the Fort Lauderdale Historical Society. Shameless plug. It's located in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and it's open noon to 4 on weekdays and 9:30 to 4 on weekends. And there you can see a little bit about the history here. There's also History Miami, which is probably equal distance from here. But it's really good for us to know, because I feel like we can only fully connect to who we are if we recognize where we are and our own migration stories, our family migration stories.
Absolutely. And the idea of just connecting and being culturally sound and understanding and appreciative, that's really what International Peace Day, which is today for those of you who didn't know, is all about, correct?
Exactly.
And I think your efforts in furthering that are well noteworthy. And apparently the United Nations Association agrees with me. Congratulations on your award. For those of you who didn't hear earlier, Tara is the 2017 recipient of the United Nations Association Cultural Educator Award. So tell us what that means to you in today's social climate, to be recognized for somebody who's proud to learn about culture and express it in different ways, and also what International Peace Day means to you.
Today, September 21st, is it's a really special day. It's Independence Day for Belize. Belize is now 36. And International Peace Day is part of the United Nations, which was formed after World War II, has a number of special days that they recognize in an effort to really continue to promote the values that allow for peace and that will help build peace. And International Peace Day is one of those days. There's also here at just behind here behind City Hall on March 22nd, we also did a celebration for World Water Day, which is another one of those celebrations throughout the year. But Peace Day this year is dedicated to really building an awareness that we all come from somewhere. We are all responsible for this places where we come from as well as where we are now. Like, it's all of our responsibility to build a Miramar that is diverse and accepting and will look for the good in everybody, not just not just the bad stuff.
And that was a really fun interview to do. As I said, we did that interview on International Peace Day, which is so important nowadays because, the ways of the world today, the cultural differences that we have need to be celebrated and not something that segment us. So what did you think about what she was saying in terms of really preserving like the native cultures of South Florida?
Well, I think, that's so important to preserve that native culture, to keep us authentic and to keep us, really true to ourselves, and not forgetting kind of where you came from. Because I think a lot of the time, I love the melting pot, especially, throughout the United States, where it's really a blend of so many different influences, creating something new and beautiful, which is great. But let's look at where we came from, where we started. Let's look at those roots and see how we can celebrate those, because I think that's just, it's always nice to celebrate what's authentic and what's true to you.
Absolutely. And she is actually a patron of Miramar. Like I said before, she went to Miramar High School. So she's really about, keeping everything home-based. and just really being indicative and representative and appreciating the cultures that she may not even come from, and just having this sense of appreciation for what they contribute to the Miramar and to the South Florida that we know today. So I thought that was really forward thinking of her, and very, very kind of her to just be able to showcase different cultures outside of her own, and kind of like the different flavors and how they blend very well together to make our very diverse community. And we thank you again, Tara, for coming on the show.
Yes.
And we hope to have you again, and we wish you well in all of your endeavors as well.
Yes, and we also love that she was here for International Peace Day, really promoting harmony and peace in our community, because I think that's something we all need a little bit more of, especially with everything going on in the world these days.
Absolutely. Peace and love everywhere.
Yes, no hate.
No hate anywhere.
Yes.
And that's going to wrap up our show for today. We hope you enjoyed taking this look back with us. Please stay tuned to us every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 a.m. to 10:30. We'll be right here in Miramar. We hope that you have an amazing day.
Bye-bye.